My name is Max Banfield. Welcome to my talk. Today I'll be discussing the topic of neurosis. This is a term that you don't hear very often nowadays, and the main reason is this. They were previously considered to be anxiety disorders or mental illnesses, and the reason was nothing showed up on x-rays or blood tests. It was argued they couldn't be physical, they must be mental. Now I investigated these concepts and found that the real cause was postural pressure on the chest. So today I'm going to explain what the individual theories were, how I found the postural cause, and I'll give you first my background so you can understand where I got the knowledge from, and secondly the original theories, and thirdly how I found the answers. And I hope to be brief. Okay, so where did I get my knowledge from? Well, when I left high school, I was first of all invited to go to Adelaide University to enrol in several courses, but none of them interested me. So I then applied for and was offered a scholarship to study optometry in Melbourne University. Well, I was also doing gymnastics, and I was an instructor there, and I was offered 3 scholarships to study leadership in a course called Group Work at the Institute of Technology. And that's where I learned all about psychology. How? That's what I'll explain now. The subjects in group work were Group Work 1 and Group Work 2, Psychology 1, Psychology 2, and Sociology. There was one other subject. The point is this: Psychology 1 and Psychology 2 were about psychology. Group Work 1 and Group Work 2 are about group psychology. And Sociology is about psychology of society. Everything was about psychology. And I went there to learn how to be a better leader in gymnastics. So you'll see my surprise when I got there. But I was there, and that's what I did. The scholarship covered the cost of books and fees for that course, group work. The next one was from the state government. There was a committee of 12 people on this organisation, and they were offering me full-time study for 1 year on full salary. And if I passed, they give me another full-time study on full salary, and a third one on full-time wages on full salary until I got a degree. And if I didn't go further, as long as I passed, I got guaranteed full-time employment. Well, I turned that one down. And then I was offered another scholarship by the federal government, and that was cost of fees, cost of books, paid for, and 8 hours time off work to go to lectures every week on full salary. And that's the scholarship I took on. And the subjects were all, as I mentioned, psychology. So that's my background, how I found out about these problems. Group Work 1, Psychology 1 and Psychology 2 were the courses that I'll talk about, because they discuss the 3 types of mental illness. I hope that's clear so far. And they were neurosis, psychosis, and depression, the 3 main types. So let me discuss. First of all, the psychosis. This is where people have bizarre thoughts. And perhaps it might assist to make it clear that in the 1960s, there were hippies that smoked marijuana and took drugs like LSD, mind-altering drugs, and they'd have bizarre dreams, nightmares and visions. And that can be drug-induced psychosis. And there are other effects on them, on the mind. For example, in the 19th century, a person would get infected in the chest or the abdomen, and that infection would spread to the brain and have similar effects of disorienting the mind. So those are different cause of a psychosis, but some people didn't have an infection and they didn't take drugs and they were disoriented for other reasons. Another type was depression. So what is depression? Well, many people get sad if an event in their life turns the wrong way. It's negative. And they feel bad, they feel unhappy, they're sad, they're despondent, they're depressed, they may feel a sense of hopelessness. These happen to everybody at some time in life, but in some people it's very profound and very troubling and very persistent. And that's depression. It's a more severe form of normal sadness. It's a way of understanding with some clarity. So that's the psychosis, bizarre thoughts, the depressions, profound sadness. And what are the neuroses? The third type. I'll now discuss. When people get pains in the chest or the abdomen or anywhere, any symptom that doesn't show up in x-rays, the argument was they can't be physical. Now, with my scientific background, and that's what my background is sort of like, I was more maths, physics and chemistry type of guy, not the literary type. And that's what I mean by my scientific background. Scientific background, you've got to have proof for everything. But these theories that if it's not physical, if you can't see a physical cause, it must be mental, that's not scientific. That's an assumption. The most likely problem is this. Don't show an x-rays, because x-rays aren't good enough to see the problem. It's because the problem's there. There just isn't the technology available to find it, the physical cause. So to assume that because it's not on the x-ray, therefore it's not there, it's caused by anxiety, it's an assumption, it's not a scientific fact. But it was often misrepresented as scientific fact. Is that clear? So the theories arose like this. If it's not physical, it must be mental. What's causing it? They said anxiety. And they come up with this idea that anxiety produces agitation of the mind and the brain, produce electrical impulses that go down the spine, come through to the chest to cause chest pain. So they call that psychosomatic. Psycho, the mind, soma, the body. The mind causes pain in the body. I also said it's anxiety neurosis. The mind sends electrical impulses down the spinal cord, the nerve, and around to the chest. Neuro-nerve osis condition. Anxiety causes neurosis, chest pain, or any other symptom. So they call that anxiety neurosis. There are a lot of variations on this theme that come about because they couldn't find a physical cause of the symptoms. And another one is this. They would say in some people they're not anxious. They make another assumption, but they'd say there must be a mental problem there, and if it's not obvious, it must be hidden in the subconscious mind. That was the argument, right? And I said the subconscious mind turns emotional problems into symptoms through the nervous system to the chest to cause the symptoms of heart disease, so that a mentally weak person could get sympathy. And that was the theory. And they would say that is conversion neurosis. The mind converts an emotional problem into a physical pain. So is that clear so far? The pains don't show up in x-rays, therefore assumed that they can't be physical, therefore it's assumed anxiety must be the cause, anxiety neurosis, or the person's converting emotional problems into pain, conversion neurosis. There are many variations on that theme. So what did I do? Well, there's no scientific basis for those problems, and I had several of those pains. And I thought anxiety is not the cause, in my experience. This other stuff is very sus. There's no scientific basis for it. And I knew there's a physical cause. But how did I find it? Well, It took me 5 years to work out that sometimes when I lean forward, I get chest pain, but not always. Sometimes when I lean forward, I get abdominal pain, but not always. And sometimes when I lean forward, I feel faint, but not always. Just enough to make me think leaning forward is doing something to the chest and abdomen. And I called that process of leaning forward the posture theory. The posture theory is the cause of all these pains that don't show up in x-rays. So the next thing I did was to continue to study this. It took 5 years to draw that conclusion. So it wasn't obvious and it wasn't easy. Remember, I got a lot of scholarships to study and I had a scientific background, and that's where these ideas come from. They didn't come out from nowhere. Another 18 years went by and I kept sitting and standing and moving and adding bits and pieces to my desk, right? Until I was standing up and higher as I added more platforms to the desk. And I didn't know if this would solve the problems, and I only gave me that impression it might. And one day in 1998, this is 14 years later, I was typing, and instead of getting pain after 15 minutes or something, I was typing for 2 hours without pain. I thought, this is the cause. Poor posture is compressing my chest and abdomen and taking the pressure off by standing up straighter and straighter. It's taking the pressure off. Now, if you think that's easy, think again. 10,000 universities couldn't figure it out and didn't even agree with me when I told them. They still said it's psychological. It was very subtle, but I knew I was right in 1998. I published that idea in a book. Another 16 years went by. And I'd just started writing and sending essays to the British Medical Journal. To my surprise, they published them. And I was talking about all these theories and all the evidence for them. And one day, there was more evidence, and I thought, I wonder what happens. What is different about my chest? And I ran my hand down my chest, and the 7th rib and 8th rib, there's a 1 centimetre. The 8th rib is pushed forward 1 centimetre. And so what was happening is this. Those are the top ribs. That one's the 7th rib, that finger, right? I lean forward and it slips behind the 8th rib and pinches a nerve under the 7th or 8th rib and causes the pain. I don't want to go into too much detail about what was in my 1,000-page book, which I wrote at 1 paragraph at a time, but that should be enough to let you know that the posture theory, leaning forward to the chest, is correct. Standing up at a tall desk is a proper remedy, and that slippage of the rib proves it. And so now you'll see standing desks in every science laboratory, every university, and every hospital in the world, because they figured out, yes, I'm correct. So that's how I found the physical cause of these symptoms. So let me go back to the 1970s again, very quickly. They said anxiety sends signals down the spine, the nerve, to the chest. Anxiety, neurosis. Anxiety is the cause. And some people want sympathy, so their subconscious mind turns emotional problems into symptoms by going down the nerve to the chest to cause chest pain, to get sympathy. Convergent neuroses. They were never any proof of them, never any scientific basis to them. And my theory of postural pressure on the nerves, postural neurosis is correct. I should be a very famous and very wealthy man, and why aren't I? Because all the people who promoted the psychological theories don't want you to know that they were wrong. So they're giving this impression that these changes come about gradually through teams of experts. So perhaps you can make sure your friends get to know that I solved that problem and how I did it. Thank you for watching.